South Central Los Angeles, home to the most notorious street gangs in America, the Bloods and the Crips. Starting out as schoolyard bullies, the two gangs spread like a virus.
Are you ready to rob? You know, plunder and pillage?
Rivals gun each other down in bloody vendettas.
The ultimate goal is to create as many funerals as you possibly can.
As the streets run red with blood, police declare war on the gangs.
We're going to put you in jail. That's the way it's going to be, so get the hell out of the city.
The police crackdown creates a powder keg. When it explodes, gang violence brings Los Angeles to its knees. Hollywood, March 21st, 1972. After a concert at the Palladium, a crowd spills onto the street. Among them, teenage gang members. Although not at the Palladium that night, Angelo White knows them well.
On the weekends, we would pick the events that we would go to all over the city, where we would have fight rival gangs.
In the crowd is Robert Ballou Jr., son of a prominent attorney and a football player at Los Angeles High. Ballou is suddenly surrounded by a group of teens who demand his leather jacket and wallet.
That was our thing back then, you know, taking the other coat.
When he refuses, the gang jumps him. Unable to defend himself, the 16-year-old is kicked, punched, and beaten by the group. After stealing his coat, the attackers flee the scene.
We were young, you know, it was all about having, you know, taking and robbing and fighting.
Robert Ballou Jr. dies from his injuries.
I was absolutely amazed that a kid would be stomped to death over a leather coat.
9 youths are charged with murder.
Well, usually they operate in 10 or so in a car. They just drive around until they see a person by themselves, and the 10 of them will go out and threaten them or hit them with a tire iron or something and take the jacket away.
It's the first death attributed to a gang calling itself the Crips. The senseless murder signifies the rise of a new gang culture with no regard for human life.
The law enforcement officer is like, man, we got a big, big problem.
The Crips originate in South Central, an area split by the Harbor Freeway, into the east and west side. A world away from affluent Beverly Hills, the African-American community suffers from poor schools, housing, and unemployment nearly 3 times the national average. 15-year-old Raymond Lee Washington starts a gang with 10 of his friends. Because of their young age, they call themselves the Cribs.
His name was Washington, and he was a general.
It was like an Al Capone, you know. He had a scar, so it's like Al Capone.
For Washington's young Cribs, the 1965 Watts riots are recent history. Frustration over poor social conditions and police brutality led the black community into the streets. The 6-day riot leaves 34 dead and more than 1,000 people injured.
Rioting in a Negro section of Los Angeles left behind scenes reminiscent of war-torn cities. It took the appearance of 14,000 troops to bring an end to what both Negro and white leaders called insurrection by hoodlums.
In the post-riot 60s, African Americans embraced the Black Power movement. The Black Panther Party preaches revolution and armed resistance against the pigs, slang for cops. Their message appeals to the young Cribs.
At 13 and 14 years old, we really didn't know what the hell they were saying. Only thing we really understood was the pigs.
Washington and his friends set out to create their own organization, even imitating the Panthers' leather jacket attire. The Crips are just one of the many small street gangs on the less affluent East Side.
Gangs on the East Side was normal. Every street was a gang.
For youth like Raymond Danafu Cook, crossing into a different neighborhood means trouble.
People that would rob you if you crossed a certain barrier, like if you came across Compton Boulevard and you were walking, you should expect somebody to check you. Where you from?
In feudal South Central, teenage gang members prove themselves with their fists. And in battle, Raymond Washington is king.
He'd challenge anybody, anywhere, anytime, all the time. He could knock Tyson out any day of the week.
His tough reputation earns him respect, attracting members into his gang.
If you were with Raymond, you were with the one who was capable of protecting everybody. He looked out for people. He had what we call now morals, but we didn't know what morals were then. But he had that.
Despite his youth, Washington is a born leader. He dreams of creating the most powerful gang in the city.
It really didn't matter what gang you were from. If you was with Raymond at that time when he was 17, 16, you were with the president. You were with it. You were in. That was the set. That was the power. That was the energy. He had that.
In the spring of 1971, Washington moves a step closer to his dream. He persuades rival gangs from the West Side to form an alliance with the Crips.
People coming from everywhere trying to get in, be initiated.
Through violence and street robbery, Washington sets himself up as a modern-day Robin Hood.
Like bandits coming from the poor sections to the more affluent sections to requisition their material to bring it back to the neighborhood. That's how Raymond operated when I knew him.
The Crips carry canes, emulating their pimp heroes of the early 70s black exploitation films. Victims describe their attackers as looking like cripples or Crips. The name Crips becomes Crips. Gang members adopt a lifestyle they call crippin'.
Crippin' meant, are you ready to rob? You know, plunder and pillage.
Patrolling South Central, Sheriff Ken Bell witnesses the rise of the Crips.
It just started growing street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. And what do we do in the school districts? We start suspending kids and expelling them and moving to different schools.
Washington himself is expelled from several schools for fighting. But by trying to stamp out the violence, school authorities only make matters worse.
So now you got different segments all over the city of Los Angeles being moved around because of the violence. They created another school, but they would go to a new school and they would get more buddies and then they would grow. That's how the Crips got so big.
By 1972, there are 6 separate Crip gangs in Los Angeles. They fight anyone who stands in their way.
Chitty bang bang, Crips don't die, they multiply. Crip or die. Either you had to Crip or you had to be against us.
While many gangs succumb to Crip aggression, a few are bold enough to stand their ground.
From Stockard to Wilshire, from Fairfax to Figueroa, was all Blackstone at one time.
T. Rogers is founder of a West Side gang called the Black P. Stones. He is angered by the Crips coming onto his turf.
The guys from the other side of the double yellow line would come over into our neighborhood, rape, rob, and burglarize certain houses. So we told them dudes, you know, if y'all got that type of shenanigans going on, y'all stay over there and y'all do it in y'all's neighborhood. And that was really the start of the bickering, the fighting.
To combat Crip expansion, the Black P Stones approach other gangs.
We called a meeting up at Manual Arts High School, and there were 4 groups. And we all agreed that we would come together, and if any of us had problems or needed help, that the others would be there to support them in their endeavors. There's safety in numbers.
To distinguish themselves in battle, the two sides wear colors. The Crips wear blue, and the anti-Crip alliance choose red, calling themselves the Bloods. From small bands of teenage thugs, the rival gangs have grown into citywide armies. The Bloods and the Crips are about to go to war. Los Angeles, the 1970s. 2 warring gangs divide South Central. The Bloods and Crips multiply across the city. Boundary lines are drawn in the battle for territorial control. The Crips go on the offensive, launching attacks on rival neighborhoods.
Go to parties, dances, and events and start fighting. That's what it was all about, fighting.
They used to call them rumbles. Some of the greatest fear you had was maybe a bicycle chain, maybe a bumper jack, a stick or bat.
But the Crips outnumber the Bloods 3-1. The Bloods need more than fists to fight back.
They had to have weapons to equalize, you know, to equalize our numbers.
The days of rumbles are over. Police see a rise in burglaries as gangsters begin an arms race.
Steal a shotgun in a burglary, cut off the barrel, you got a sawed-off shotgun. But 22s, 32s, very popular.
Now, both Bloods and Crips routinely carry firearms. Crip founder Raymond Lee Washington disapproves of the use of guns. He believes that real men prove themselves with their fists. But in 1974, Washington is jailed for second-degree robbery. Behind bars, the old-school street fighter becomes disillusioned with the gang he founded. Back on the street, the war between the Crips and Bloods enters a new phase as gunplay goes mobile. 1974, Baldwin Village. 16-year-old T. Rogers and his Black P. Stone Bloods get together at his mother's house.
Everybody would come to my mom's house. My mom's house was the Kool-Aid house. And everybody would come over there and do their homework and dance, and the girls would tell their problems to my mother, and the boys would hang out, and we'd lift weights and box and throw the football around, you know, all the things that kids do.
Suddenly, a slow-moving car approaches the house. The drive-by is born.
After the drive-by, we had roll call, and everybody called out their name. One name didn't get called out. There was a murmur.
A 14-year-old Black P. Stone has been hit in the head.
He's laying in between the car and the gutter, in between the car and the curb. And I bent down and I rested his head on my lap. The brain matter fell between my fingers. And I had to go to his sister and his little brother and his mother. And I got to go back and say, he got killed hanging out with me. Who the am I?
LA Police Helicopter 8 to Culver City on Claymars.
Between 1972 and 1974, the number of gang-related murders more than doubles, from 32 to 70. Responding to the climbing murder rate, police set up specialized gang units.
I was amazed at the continual criminal acts that just seemed to keep coming. No matter how many people you put in jail, there was always another incident. And it got to the place where you almost wonder, what am I doing out here? Because the problem became so big.
In South Central Los Angeles, there is a steady flow of young recruits. When Kershawn Scott is 12 years old, he joins the 8-Trey gangsta Crips. He takes the street name Lil Monster. For Scott and his friends, guns and gang warfare are just part of growing up.
Initially, I didn't feel any different because the people around me didn't change. These were the same people I grew up with from short pants days. These are the same people I shot marbles with, I flew kites with. You know, we weren't flying kites and shooting marbles anymore. Now we were shooting at people.
This new generation of boy soldiers must prove themselves. They call it work.
Putting in work can consist of writing your name on walls, spray painting, robbing people, beating people, right down to actual killings. You rise in the ranks by what you've done. Obviously, the more work you put in for the set, the bigger your reputation, the more respect you get, and the quicker you will rise. I took my position within my set seriously. And every day I put that uniform on, and every day I went to work.
When Crip founder Raymond Washington is released from jail, he returns to South Central. In Washington's absence, the Crips have grown beyond his control. 45 different Crip gangs now spread across Los Angeles. But they don't just fight the rival Bloods. They turn on each other.
So many different neighborhoods that used to be other groups was all Crips, so it's like sometimes you might go to a shootout thinking you're shooting your enemy and you're shooting Crips.
Saddened by the infighting, Washington, the founding father of the Crips, has had enough.
I've talked about, getting things back together, Actually, he didn't want to be involved in any of that, I guess he fell in love with a woman. He wanted the responsibility of having children and having a job and, doing this thing.
August 9th, 1979. Raymond Lee Washington is hanging out on the corner of 64th and San Pedro. A car slowly approaches. The occupants call out Washington's name.
Raymond had a thing. He used to always tell us, never go up to a car. Never go up to a car.
Washington must have recognized the occupants because he ignores his own advice and walks up to the vehicle. Suddenly, the occupants of the car produce a sawed-off shotgun. At point-blank range, the pellets tear into his stomach. The 26-year-old founder of the Crips is rushed to the hospital, where he dies.
When he got killed, when he walked up to the car, we automatically knew that it was somebody that he knew.
Washington's killer is never caught. The murder shatters the fragile Crip alliance. With no real leadership or direction, Crip gangs turn on each other. On the west side, two of the largest Crip gangs, the 8-Trey Gangstas, and their neighbors, the Rollin' 60s, begin feuding. It starts with a fight over a girl at a party and escalates to a shootout.
We as 8-Treys escalated it quickly because we were eager for the fight, eager to prove ourselves. And being at war with the 60s gave us that opportunity, and we jumped in it with both feet.
To fight their war, the 8 Trey gangsters need weapons. December 31st, 1980, South Central.
We had formulated a plan, a few of us, that we would break into the surplus that night at 12 midnight to steal the guns.
While casing the Western Surplus gun store on Hawthorne Boulevard, Kershaw Scott's brother, Monster Cody, is ambushed by the Roland 60s.
My brother wasn't armed, and he was shot 5 times. The first thing that went through my mind was, whoever did this, they had to pay. This wasn't going to be a tit for tat. This was going to be, you shot my brother, and I'm going to try to lay down 10 of you because this is what you did. I planned a revenge mission. And we executed it to the fullest.
The next night, Scott and 5 or 6 other gang members cross Western Avenue in a stolen van. Cruising enemy streets, they hunt the perpetrators. Unable to find their targets, the 8 Treys quietly pull up on a Roland 60s party. They jump out and open fire. Scott and his crew kill 1 member and wound 4 more.
And a month later, I was in jail for murder, along with everybody that was with me.
Kershaw Scott serves nearly 6 years at the California Youth Authority. He is just 15 years old.
Had I been 1 year older, I would still be in jail. And I've been out now 21 years.
In less than a decade, gang war has changed from schoolyard rumbles to nightly drive-by massacres. Gang members are now trapped in a culture of vendetta. In 1980, there are 355 gang homicides in Los Angeles County. But an even more deadly killer is about to hit the streets. In 1982, there are 155 African-American street gangs in Los Angeles. Blood and Crip gangs are locked in a cycle of revenge. And now, Crips are killing Crips in a vicious civil war.
The ultimate goal to create as many funerals as you possibly can.
The nature of gang conflict is set to change. The reason? A sparkling white powder with a dangerous allure. Cocaine. In 1982, a federal crackdown in Florida drives the drug trade west. As smugglers ship tons of coke through the Mexican border, Los Angeles becomes America's cocaine capital. At $100 a gram, it's a high for the Hollywood rich. In search of even bigger profits, dealers begin producing a new, far more deadly drug that everyone can afford: crack. In 1986, 21-year-old Kershaw Scott is released from prison. He has served a 6-year sentence for murder, committed in retaliation for the shooting of his brother.
I didn't learn my lesson. I learned how to become a better criminal.
He returns to a homeboy's welcome. Friends come by, giving him money and drugs.
I had never seen crack cocaine. I had never seen powder cocaine.
Attempting to go straight, Kershaw gets a job paying minimum wage. But the lure of fast and easy money dealing crack cocaine on the street is overpowering.
I was supposed to be at work at 10:30. That was the first night that I sold crack. And I started selling crack that night at 6 o'clock. And by 10 o'clock, I had made $4,000. And I knew I wasn't going to that job.
This smokable form of cocaine is a drug dealer's dream. Cheap to buy and simple to make.
I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't know how to cut it. I certainly didn't know how to turn powder to rock. But I learned quickly. It's as easy as cooking eggs. Yes, it is. A little boiling water jar, a little baking soda. And it's banging around in the glass. Just that simple. So simple that a kid can do it.
To satisfy the insatiable demand for crack, gangs set up drive-through drug markets across South Central. Taking its name from the crackling sound it makes when smoked, crack provides a short, intense high, which leaves the user desperately craving more. As crack sweeps the neighborhood like a hurricane, Blood T. Rogers witnesses the community implode.
Just stand out on the corner and say what you need, rock, sex, or weed. Then all of a sudden, you know, a 13-year-old kid would make more than his mother would make in a year, in a week. And then he became the head of the house. Then his mother became his best client. See, something is wrong with this. When a mother can drop her baby off to me, say, I'm going downstairs to get the rest of the money, I'll be right back, and leave her baby with me for 10 days over a $25 rock, something is wrong with this.
Gang cop Tony Moreno notices crack changing gang behavior.
The gang members that became real entrepreneurs, real good drug dealers, they would drift away from the gang life. Because the normal gang life, there's liability there. And if you're making $10,000 a week, why do you want to do a drive-by at some guys at a dance or a park? It doesn't make sense. You know, because they could actually make the money, that became their focus.
As the focus changes, so does the gang structure. Gang members use their newfound wealth to fund a Hollywood lifestyle.
All of a sudden we start seeing Crips and Bloods with money. They had cars, and all of a sudden they're popping up everywhere. And we'd see that by talking to them. We do search warrants, you get pictures, you see them in Hawaii, you see them in Aspen, Colorado skiing, you're like, what's going on here?
To defend their lucrative business, gangs open fortified crack houses or dope spots. With barred windows and impenetrable steel doors, the crack house works like a vending machine.
$5 rocks, $10 rocks, $20 rocks.
Put your money through the slot, and out comes the dope. Inside, gang members process crack from kilo bricks of powder. On the street, a kilo is known as a bird.
You know, if you're cooking a bird of cocaine, turning a bird of powder cocaine into crack cocaine, it's a real strong smell. And then while you're smelling that, you're getting high off that really. You know, and then you got, you know, powder cocaine on the table, and everybody in here is sniffing powder cocaine.
High on their own supply and flush with drug money, now gangs can afford the latest high-tech weaponry.
This, you better watch out. This is an M1 carbine, 32 rounds. I can go tear up Lewis Park with this. I can kill about 32 people if I hit them all.
Yes, indeed.
This is the same thing. I own 2 of these.
Because instead of having a 5-shot Saturday night special where you shoot 5 shots, they pull the trigger and now 20 shots are flying out, and those shots are flying everywhere. So you have a lot more innocent people getting hit.
South Central is now so dangerous that some residents resort to sleeping in the bathtub to avoid stray bullets. In 1987, there is 1 gang murder in Los Angeles every 24 hours. But it's only when gang war reaches middle-class neighborhoods that the City of Angels finally demands action. By the mid-'80s, a crack epidemic grips Los Angeles. African-American street gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, are engaged in a vicious cycle of violence and murder over drugs and territory. Until now, the bloody conflict has been contained in LA's South Central neighborhoods. January 30th, 1988. A busy Saturday night in upscale Westwood Village. Karen Toshima, a graphic artist from Long Beach, is in town celebrating a job promotion. After dinner with a friend, she unknowingly walks between two rival gang members. Caught in the crossfire, Toshima is shot. She dies on the sidewalk. The shooting horrifies middle-class city residents with the realization that gang violence can flare up anywhere. The public demands the police take action. April 9th, 1988. LAPD Chief Daryl Gates launches an all-out assault on the gangs. He calls it a cultural development program.
I told my officers, you need to tell them, we want you to develop. So either get the hell out of the city, or we're going to drive you into the ocean and we're going to put you in jail. That's the way it's going to be, so get the hell out of the city. And I said, the hammer's coming down. We're going to use a hammer now.
Gates floods the streets of South Central with 1,000 officers.
We were given specific assignments to saturate the area, basically what we call gang suppression, and to identify and arrest as many gang members as we could to clean the streets up.
In the first weekend, police arrest nearly 1,500 people as they enforce Gates' zero-tolerance policy.
Jaywalking, driving with no license, curfew, scouring the community for people breaking the law, troublemakers, and dealing with them.
As gangbangers flee the heat of Gates' war, many skip town to evade capture. The chief's high-profile operation is at first heralded as a success.
We put a lot of gang members in jail, those that didn't understand our cultural development program. No gang shootings, no gang crime. You could walk on the streets, not be molested. People loved it.
While some citizens are happy to see the gangsters arrested, many perceive it as racist oppression, similar to the brutality witnessed in the 1965 Watts riots.
They were rounding people up. Whether you were in a gang or not. If you got caught in that sweep between a Thursday and a Sunday, you went into the computer as a gang member.
For cops on the street, the alienation of the wider community makes their job harder.
Unfortunately, people that were innocent get caught up with the gang members. They got pulled over, they got jacked up by the cops, and so then they weren't happy, and it got to the point where now we created this big divide between law enforcement, us, who's supposed to be protecting these folks, and the people in the community that are supposed to trust us, and we lost a lot of trust.
Gates comes under fire from all sides.
I'm being bombarded by my city council, I'm being bombarded by the mayor, I'm being bombarded by everyone, and I'm doing my best to try and reduce this kind of problem. And I'm not going to take media criticism, I'm not going to take political criticism, I'm tired of that. I'm doing my best to solve a problem. And so I just pulled the Operation Hammer off, and gang activity went back to where it was. And the community, once again, those good people, they were devastated that I pulled it out.
After making close to 25,000 arrests, Gates' war on gangs ends. As cops retreat, the shootings skyrocket. In 1990, there are 690 gang-related murders in Los Angeles County.
Life in the City of Angels has gone to hell. A record number of killings in July and August.
Akila Sherrills is 12 years old when he joins the Grape Street Crips in Watts. But he leaves his home in the Jordan Downs housing project behind when he swaps the street life for life on campus.
This was like divine intervention. I was escaping the neighborhood. I was not interested in going home. During the spring break and all that kind of stuff, I didn't go home. I stayed on campus. You know, everybody else was going. I'd be in my dorm, you know, because every time I called to the house, somebody was getting shot and getting killed. And then my brother, you know, they was gangbanging and selling drugs and all that kind of stuff. And my brother got shot.
Sherrills reacts by becoming a community activist. He returns to the housing projects in Watts and begins working to establish a truce between rival gangs.
We had this vision, you know, that if we hooked up, if we created a peace treaty between the Jordan Downs and the Nickerson Garden Housing projects, it would create a domino effect for all of the other neighborhoods to join the movement.
Akila Sherrills faces a tough challenge. After nearly 20 years of murder and mayhem, there is bitterness and anger.
Although we all had agreed that, you know, that it was cool and, you know, we were a part of a part of making the truce happen, nobody had actually made the first move and stepped out.
Now at last, a glimmer of hope as the Bloods and Crips begin talks. But hopes for peace are shaken when 4 LAPD officers go on trial, accused of beating black motorist Rodney King. After 20 years of gang warfare on the streets of Los Angeles, a small group of Bloods and Crips in Watts are negotiating a truce. But on April 29, 1992, hope for full-fledged peace is shattered.
A stunning verdict from Southern California. The jury in the Los Angeles police brutality trial has just reached its verdict.
The jury found the defendants not guilty on all the charges and declared a mistrial on the one charge that they were hung on.
Kershawn Scott watches television dumbfounded as the 4 LAPD officers are acquitted for the brutal beating of motorist Rodney King.
My reaction was, let's go tear some. Let's go to Beverly Hills and tear some. That was the push over the top, and it led us to the streets.
Trouble erupts on Normandy Avenue when Scott's gang loots a liquor store. When the police arrive, the mob's rage turns on them.
What started as a shouting match back and forth escalated into rocks and bottles and bricks being thrown at them.
Confronted by the hostile crowd, cops are ordered to retreat for their own safety.
And there we stood on the corner of Florence and Normandy as if we had just defeated LAPD. And then basically everybody that came through that intersection that wasn't black was in trouble.
Gang members pull motorists from their cars, beating and robbing them. At about 6:45 p.m., white truck driver Reginald Denny drives toward the intersection, unaware of the trouble ahead.
He came through that intersection driving the biggest thing in that intersection, and he stopped. And he was snatched out of his truck, and he was beaten unnecessarily and viciously.
Scott's fellow Crip, Damian Football Williams, strikes Denny with a brick.
sound of the brick hitting his head is what made me get off of that corner. It wasn't right.
Sickened by the brutality, Scott takes no further part in the riot. He leaves the scene and heads home.
By nightfall, South Central Los Angeles was ablaze. Not since the Watts riots of 1965 has this city seemed so out of control.
For 6 chaotic days, South Central LA burns. Order is only restored after the National Guard is called in. 53 people die and 2,000 are injured from the mayhem, and over 100 buildings are destroyed, causing $1 billion worth of damage. Incredibly, Reginald Denny survives the vicious attack. Kershaw's friend, Damian Football Williams, is convicted of felony mayhem and receives a 10-year sentence. In the ashes of the riot, Bloods and Crips finally come together. Unified by rioting against the police, they declare a tentative truce.
We, as the Bloods and the Crips, have joined together without any problem from the police, the media, and the Bloods and Crips as one. We'll be able to give back to the parks, recreation, and the rest of the community can live without, so the community can live without fear.
The people of South Central can walk the streets again.
Peachtree changed the quality of life in the neighborhood. Grandmothers began to walk the streets again. Kids played in the parks again. Many men became fathers to their children for the first time. You know, that it was gang of Peachtree babies.
As gangbangers in South Central realize the futility of their lifestyle, America glamorizes gangster culture in film, fashion, and music.
Nobody wanted to be from Compton or from Watts, you know. Nowadays, man, you got white kids with their hats rocked to the side. Everybody want to be from the hood because it's been romanticized, you know, as if there's this freedom that exists in the hood that really don't exist.
Blood and Crips gangs export violence and drugs across America.
Now all of a sudden they want to be part of this mystique, this mentality, this attitude, this culture. You have white Crips and Bloods. You have Asian Crips and Bloods. You know, all over this country. You have Hispanic Crips and Bloods. It's crazy. It's unfortunate. You know, it's something our society had never thought would probably happen. But it's happening now, and it has to be addressed.
In Los Angeles, many older gang members have turned their lives around. Kershaw Scott becomes a gang spokesperson promoting peace. He quits the gang life for his son.
I had to give my son something better. I had to give him something better than Los Angeles. I had to give him something better than the Death Star.
But gang culture has a deadly allure. Scott is powerless to stop his own son from going to jail.
He got involved with the wrong people, and he got involved into a life crime. And I felt helpless. I felt like I had been all around this country and outside of this country trying to help other kids and help other people, trying to save lives. And I couldn't save my son. Yeah, I deal with that on a daily basis, every day, every day.
Today, Blood T. Rogers works as a gang intervention worker. He coaches a basketball team where Crips and Bloods shoot hoops, not each other.
I have one regret. What I put together was a platform for death, and the people that died believing in what I believed in, that is my only regret. Because with the power of life and death in my hands, I don't have the power to bring them back.
Today, thanks to gang intervention work and better relations between the community and the police, the Los Angeles murder rate is at its lowest level since 1970.
All I find is the next move. Yeah, but every time I get next